You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. Today's episode is an Ultraman World Championship race recap. I have two of the newest Ultraman Hall of Fame members and both the men's and women's world champions for 2024. The Ultraman Hall of Fame has the race originators, longtime staff and volunteers, and a number of athletes in it. This year saw 4 new entries into the Hall of Fame, bringing the total number to 17. Longtime volunteers Jamie and Bo Pardau were inducted, as well as my next 2 guests on the podcast. 20-time finisher Gary Wang and the voice of Ultraman, Steve King. Gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast, both of you.
Thanks very much, Larry.
Thank you.
Nice to see you both back here. Now, Gary, of course, you were previously on the show in season 2, episode 6. At that time, we learned about you that in addition to your 20 Ultraman Hawaii races, you're also an ultra marathoner, and you've done numerous ultra events, over 200, I believe it was, including the Western States and the Hurt 100. You have a record that will likely not ever be broken with your 20 consecutive Ultraman Hawaii races. How were you able to pull off such a feat to get to that point?
I don't know if I was trying to go for 20. It's just such a great event to be around every year, to go back to. I would just keep doing it. I was racing pretty hard early years. Then it more become a annual trip to go see my friend, just hang out with people like Steve King and other folks. Basically I got to 20 before I got too old, so that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't trying to set a record or anything, but it's just what I love to do.
Yeah. And of the 20, do they all start to blend together, or are there one or two that stand out for you as like ones that are the most memorable?
They pretty much all blend together. I can't really tell you what happened. Even the people blend together because many same individual helped me over the years.
Right.
Places. When you've been around the sports long enough, everything kind of blend together, in one memory, but not particular to the years.
Right. Yeah. And this year you weren't racing. What was it that you were doing this year at the race? What was your role?
So I ended up a volunteer for Cheryl. I was just manning the corner for the bike rider, make sure they make the turns.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's always helpful out there for sure. And Steve, you've been such a huge part of the Ultraman world as an announcer and also as a racer. Can you remind us about how you first came into the Ultraman Ohana?
Well, it was as a result of 1993 when we first hosted one here at Ultraman Canada. And funny enough, I just heard 2 days ago from Tom Price, the original winner of that event. He was happy to see what had happened on the Big Island. And then obviously 2007, I went to the Big Island to be part of the Ultraman World Championships. And I've been to Australia as well as to Wales and Florida and Arizona. So I'm very fortunate to meet such great athletes as Gary. And people forget too, Gary used to have realendurance.com where you could find out all sorts of information about the ultras, the ones he had done, but also the other ones around the world. And I think sometimes he doesn't realize just how incredible he's been as an athlete, because I think it's been like 8 times he's been in the top 10 on the Big Island, and a couple of times he's been a third overall, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, right through to, I think the last placing was 22nd. But again, when you, the other thing is, he's celebrated other milestones along the way. I think it was 2017, he celebrated his 50th birthday on there, and he's a part of the great Rat Pack, which were with us previously as a team, as well as all having been individuals. So it's been great to know those guys and get to know the individuals at the different events, and those who are fortunate enough to make it to the Big Island for the World Championships.
Mm-hmm. With all the knowledge and the history, you're talking about Gary here and all the people in the Rat Pack, and Gary, I'll get you to speak to them in a minute too. You carry so much of the knowledge of what's happened year after year. And considering the other members of the Hall of Fame that are already there, what does it mean to you to be a part of that group?
Well, I'm extremely honored. It came as a big surprise to me when they mentioned me as one of the inductees, to be in the company of people like Gary and Bo and Jamie, who have done a wonderful job over the years supporting. In fact, Bo ended up being the paddler for the overall winner, Jen Annett, this year. But I know someone like Gary, he's had people like Ellis Andrews on his team, and Ellis and Dave Wilson are still the most senior male athletes to have done the event on the Big Island at 65. Wendy Minor is also the most senior female to have done one universally, as well as on the Big Island. And both those people were supporting the event this year as well. And I know he's had filmmaking quite a few times. I think something like maybe all 20 times he's been a part of the crew. He was there supporting Jackie Hoffman, Lauren Fithian, who was actually finished the event. These are people that he's had on the crew. And I think maybe Sherry Carney as well, if I remember right. Another one who comes, some of the people that turn up there just do the paddling and supporting those swimmers safely through, because they're the ones who know the best lines to take over the years. Right. So it's important for athletes to try and get that to happen. Obviously, if they've been training with someone, that's in their favor too. But when you look at who's on board and you look at Jane Bacchus, Ultra Mama, you look at the original two winners, Kurt Madden, Ardis Poe, both of those are still very keen. In fact, Kurt in his 60s came back and got 7th place a couple of years ago, and I think he'll be returning again. Ardis often is there with us as well. She wasn't able to be this year, but she'll be supporting in every way she can. So it's really neat to see people who've done the event before or are coaching people from afar because they've done it, and not just having done an Ultraman, but doing the world specifically because of the nuances of being on the Big Island.
Yeah. And Gary, part of your thing of going back every year is, as you said, getting to see those friends and the people. The part that you're known for is that group of athletes that Steve mentioned earlier, the Rat Pack. Maybe for people who may not know the Ultraman Rat Pack, who they are, can you tell us who's in your group and how did it come to be?
So Liz Marty, Raymond, Tony, O'Keefe, Jochen, and Dunbark, Miro Prager, Peter Mueller. Peter is from Germany. So those are the folks that that Jochen would call the Rat Pack. I think Jochen actually invented the coined the term the Rat Pack for the group. So every time he's here, he bring everybody together. He makes shirts for everybody in the group. So that's kind of fun. There's many regulars back in the days as well. People like Uli Vinkelmann, Alexander Ribeiro. We love each other. We don't see those folks very often now, so it's still good to know what they are doing, how they are doing. So
yeah, and there are fellow Hall of Famers in there too. Some of the people you mentioned. What does it mean for you, Gary, to go into with this particular class with Jamie and Bo and Steve? Like, how do you feel about that relationship of being honored at the same time?
It's incredible honor to be in the Hall of Fame, but I wasn't really expected. So I really don't know what to say about being this class of a Hall of Famer. It's an honor to be part of the group, and it's among some special people that I love, which is important to me. So,
yeah. And Steve, for you, you've been recognized before. I mean, you've been an athlete, an organizer, announcer. You've done every part of numerous sports, and you've had other deserved acknowledgments, which include the BC Hall of Fame, Athletics BC Hall of Fame, the Lifetime Achievement Award with Triathlon BC, and now obviously the Ultraman Hall of Fame. When I was watching the video of you accepting your bowl, at first you seem to be at a loss for words, which is shocking for you. Now that you've had a little more time to process it, is there anything that maybe you want to say that you didn't get a chance to say there at the ceremony?
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that. And part of the reason I was a bit of a loss for words was, firstly, I wasn't expecting it. So that was a bit of a shocker. But then when I got up and realized what photographs they had put up there, they had photographs of myself and my wife, Jean, who unfortunately for the last little while has not been able to accompany me to the Big Island. And she's been with me since I started this when we were first together. We've been together 50 years. So we've been to hundreds of races together where she's acted as my spotter and writes down all sorts of information as the event unfolds. And she loves the Ultraman races as much as I do. And so it really hit me when I saw those pictures up there of myself with her. And so for me, I share the award with her. I share that induction with her.
Oh, that's great. And Gary, how about you? Was there anything that you maybe left off that you wanted to add to what you had said?
I don't remember what I said actually. It's a great honor for sure. It's part of a year I will always be around on the Big Island. So looking forward to the future athletes, and I love everyone I have come across in the past 20 years in the community, and it's some very special people that in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously some history was made at this year's race with Jen and Michelle going 1 and 2 overall. And for those that have not heard you make the call yet, Steve, I'd just like to play that for you and then get some comments on the other side.
Bike ride yesterday, that all changed. She ended up with a day one time 8:25.42 and a 2-day time 16:17.59, 11 minutes 21 seconds down on Michelle Vesterby of Denmark, but it looks like the Canadian, I think the third Canadian female, may be taking the title. We've had Tracy Preston, we've had Tara Norton, right now from Penticton, British Columbia, and home of Ironman Canada, a race in which she's been on podium, of course, with Challenge, she's taken pictures, she's been on the podium in Whistler, and in Lake Placid, Des Moines, Arizona. Please welcome Jen Annett with husband, Adation with her son Nixon, out the line with the rest of the crew coming through a sub 6:47. Ladies and gentlemen, you have seen records blown away here. That is a run course record. It is an overall title record. She's about, I think, some 17 minutes inside. We'll find out what the exact overall time is, but absolutely stunning there. 23:04.56, I think that is.
Absolutely stunning. What were your thoughts of being there for that historic event?
Well, obviously, I was very, very, very pleased. We've seen over the last few years women getting closer and closer to that top spot. And we've had some women who have won events, as you're well aware. Kate Bevilacqua, Antonina Resnikov, Amy Van Tassel has done so. Amy Robitaille has done so. Michelle Vesterby had done so. Jen Annett did so in Canada. And when Dee Griesbauer did so very well in Florida and set that overall record there, the world best, until it was beaten this year by Jen, we had her and Antonina with a third and a fourth at the World Championships. And then last year, Amy Robitaille, André-Anne Girard were second and third. So this year, to see Jen and Michelle 1 and 2 was outstanding. And of course, the extra bonus for me being Canadian, for me being from BC and Penticton, to have a fourth Canadian female take the women's title. We had Tracy Preston, who won it 3 times, Tara Norton, who's won it twice, and Amy Robitaille, of course, last year. And then to have a fourth Canadian female, but being from Penticton specifically, someone I've watched over the years do so very well, taking a world title, setting those records. And I mean, she knocked an hour, 2 minutes, 15 off the age group record as well, the 30 to 39. Let alone, you know, the third and fourth fastest day one bike splits were between the two of those. Then we had, of course, the great bike split on day 2. It was a new record by 5 minutes, 41 seconds. But what amazed me, and I did mention that at the awards as well, was the fact that Jen's bike split to the hours and minutes was exactly the same as she did in Canada, as was her run split at 6:46. I mean, and 7:42 for the bike. To me, that was stunning, you know. And so to come away with the overall record as well, to beat all the men. I mean, with all due respect, poor Juan Bautista Castilla Arroyo, if someone had said you're going to be the top male on the Big Island, I'm sure he wouldn't have dreamt that that meant third place overall. We had a similar thing happen a few years ago in Canada, where we had women first, second, fourth, and fifth, with the first male sandwiched in between them. A double chick sandwich, as we called it then. But, you know, it's wonderful what's happening here. And so it was thrilling. And I know we're going to all get together here in Penticton. She's hit the news big time here. The papers have put it out, and the media. But we're getting together with herself, her family, her crew, and all the local supporters in January to really welcome home a big time, a world champion.
Yeah, that was a fantastic thing to watch unfold. I knew after interviewing both of them on the podcast previously that it was going to be quite a race, and I was interested to see, you know, that it was going to be one of the women possibly going in first. And over those first 2 days, the way they just kept us so close and kept it interesting, it was exciting to watch.
It was.
Yeah. Well, looking ahead now to the future, Gary, let me ask you, what are your future plans? Do we have more races coming? The consecutive streak has ended, but what's coming up? Are there ultramarathons, more trips to Hawaii as an athlete?
I'm still running. I mean, I'm still running ultras. There's probably still a few more Western states in my future, like in getting.
Anything specific on the calendar for 2025?
So I signed up for Cascade Crest lottery. most 100-mile races are lottery this day, so I won't know until probably at late January on what race I'll be running. Usually you pick your hundreds, then you plan your schedule kind of around that.
Right.
Yeah, I'll see. I'll probably do 5-6 ultras. Running ultra marathon next year, so just stay healthy. That's my main goal. Not so much of a competition, but just stay fit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you both for joining me today. It was a pleasure to get to speak to the two Hall of Famers together here. Congratulations again. Well deserved for both of you. And I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It was great to have both of those guys on with me once again. Gary Wang, of course, was in season 2, episode 6, as I mentioned earlier, which was also a Kona preview. So if you want to go back and listen to that one, you can hear the Kona preview for that year, where Steve King, of course, is part of that. Steve's been on many times. If you want to hear about Steve personally, I suggest you go back and listen to season 1, episodes 1, 2, and 3, because I couldn't start a 515 podcast without having Steve King on the first 3 episodes. And don't go anywhere, because coming up, I'll be speaking to the 2024 world champion and female holder of the world record for the 515 distance. And that's right after this next conversation that I'm going to have with the men's champion for 2024. My guest today is a very well-known ultra athlete, especially in his home country of Spain. He has completed 11 5:15 distance events and numerous other ultra endurance adventures. He is joining me today with his interpreter, Rosa. He is the 2024 Men's Ultraman World Champion, Juan Bautista Castilla Arroyo, but everyone knows him as Ultra Chamba. Welcome to the podcast, Chamba and Rosa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.
So you finally made it home. I understand that you had to take a very long flight with lots of stops to make it back to Spain from Hawaii. How did that go for you? And when you got home, did your hometown Valverde del Camino, did they throw you a parade?
Finalmente has llegado a casa, entiendo que ha sido un viaje largo. Valverde del Camino, tu pueblo, te ha recibido. ¿Qué tal ha sido la experiencia, el viaje?
Bueno, ha sido un viaje muy largo porque hemos tenido escalas muy largas. Valverde del Camino y Hawái está a más de 15.000 kilómetros. La verdad es que
Yes, the return flight was a bit complicated. There were lots of delays and the stopovers at airports were very long. Spain is 15,000 kilometers away from Hawaii and the trip was horrible. It took us more than 48 hours to get home. I still haven't managed to get back to normal. It's holidays here in Spain these days. But next week, Junta de Andalucía, which is the Andalusian government, will organize a reception for me.
Oh, that is fantastic. I love to hear that. Not the part about the flight, but the part that they are going to do something for you.
Encantado de oír que todo ha ido también. No lo del viaje. El viaje le da pena, pero que va a hacer la Junta de Andalucía y nuestro pueblo algo por ti. Genial.
Please let me list some of your times for the listener so that they understand what you did on the way to your championship. You had a swim time of 3:25. A day one bike of 5:18 for a total of 8:44 on the first day. You were fifth out of the swim, but you managed to pull yourself up into third place on the bike. On day two, your bike was an 8:34 and your run was a 7:47. Your total time became 25:06:16. So my question about that is, were you happy with your performance? Did things go to plan for you?
Bueno, tengo que decir que
The first day in the swim, we followed my handicap quite well. We had a strategy of swimming in a straight line, despite having big currents against. But I am not a great swimmer, and we wanted to limit the time lost to the leading group. My time was 3 hours 25 minutes for the 10 kilometers swimming. That day on the bike, I felt quite strong in the first part since we started on a hill, and I'm a good climber. There, I reduced the distance to the leading group, although the last part with the wind against hurt me. I did the 148 kilometers in 5 hours and 18 minutes. On the second day, in the 276 kilometers, I had different moments. My weak points are descending or on the flat. I am very small, 164 centimeters and 55 kilograms. That makes me slower. That's why in downhills and flat with wind against, I suffer. But then I enjoyed the climbs and reduced time to the leading group. That day was very special since I managed to reduce my record by 1 hour and 25 minutes. I finished that day in 8 hours and 34 minutes. And finally, on the third day, I suffered more than expected. I'm a good runner, and my time for this distance is 6 hours and 24 minutes. But after the first half marathon, which we were leading quite comfortably, I started having stomach problems. That made me reduce my rhythm, going at a speed much slower than I'm used to. This affected my muscles too. At the end, we ended that day with 7 hours and 47 minutes.
Yeah, so there were definitely some conditions out there that were difficult, and obviously maybe you didn't have the run that you wanted, but you have a lot of experience from doing various races around the world. You've competed in Wales, Canada, Australia, Florida, Hawaii before, Arizona, and as well as the KOA 5:15 in Spain and another Ultra Tri in Spain for 5:15 distance. How do you think the Hawaii course compares to the others that you have done as far as its difficulty?
Cada carrera son diferentes.
Hawaii is the top. Hawaii is special for its climate, its different levels, it's magical and at the same time very hard.
Su clima, sus desniveles, su humedad hace que sea una prueba pues diferente. Para mí algo mágica, que a cualquier atleta nos encantan competir allí.
Each race is special. None of them are the same. Sometimes due to the terrain and some other because of your body. It doesn't matter how much you train, something can always happen and you have to overcome it.
Por ti mismo, por tus condiciones físicas, psicológicas, que pueden hacer mella en tu rendimiento. Pero por ello me gusta Ultraman, porque Ultraman es la carrera de la vida.
That's why Ultraman sport is magical and I love it. It's gaining to life. It's improving.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I'm wondering, how did it compare to your last time in Hawaii in 2018? And did you feel like you came more prepared for the event this time with the previous experience?
Para mí son carreras diferentes. Llevo muchos años, pues del 2018 en esta disciplina. He mejorado muchísimo. La verdad es que...
Well, there've been different races from 2018 to 2024. I have improved, more experience, but they were good experiences, the two of them, and I certainly hope that I will be better for 2025.
Oh, that's great. So you're already planning on going back again for the 2025 edition of Ultraman Hawaii then?
Estupendo que estás pensando en la Ultraman del 2025.
Yes.
You must defend your title.
Tienes que defender tu título.
Sí.
Yes.
Nuestra
I know what that one
intención...
means. After you came out of the swim in 5th place, I said by the end of day 1, you got to 3rd place. And you ended up for the rest of the race chasing the two ladies out in front, Michelle and Jen. What are your feelings or comments on what happened at the race this year with those two ladies taking 1st place and 2nd place at the World Championship?
Para mí, socialmente es algo muy importante para que la sociedad pueda ver.
This is something very beautiful and important for the society.
Para mí ha sido un placer poder compartir todos los momentos.
Society where we must respect the equality between men and women. My most sincere congratulations. It was a pleasure to run with them.
Yeah. Excellent. I agree fully. Now, I was also following your athlete Facebook page while you were racing. So I was getting all of the updates of your race as well as some of the other athletes. And I know that at the finish line, you were emotional. And you had mentioned on your page that you were thinking of your grandpa who has passed and would have been 99 years old on one of the race days. Can you tell me what it was like running for your grandpa and what it was that your grandpa meant to you in your life?
Así fue. Él nació el 1 del 12 de 1925, el día que culminaba este campeonato del mundo de Ultraman. Por ello debería de reconocerlo y dedicárselo a él. Mi abuelo, para mí, lo ha sido y lo
exactly. He was born on December the 1st, 1925, the last day of this Ultraman World Championship. That's why he had to be recognized and dedicated the race to him. My grandfather is everything to me. He taught me to be the person I am now, to love what I do with this passion. He showed me the values of fight, discipline. It's incredible how much I miss him. That's why I pay tribute to him wherever I race. I always get inspired by him, but not only in the races, but also in my work and my family life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm glad that that worked out for you to have that anniversary on race day and to make that even more special for you in your world championship this year.
También en estas carreras, pues suelo dedicársela a mis dos pequeños, Daniela,
Of course, I
mi
always
hija
get
de 7 años, y
inspired
Noah,
also by my
mi hijo de
family, and I
5,
dedicate my
a
race
mis
also to
padres
them. My two kids,
y a mi
Daniela and
mujer,
Noah,
porque
5 and
sin
7,
ellos
my
sería
wife, of course,
imposible.
and my
Ya
parents.
sabéis las horas
You know
que
how many
invertimos
hours
entrenando
you need to train to
sin
prepare for
ellos,
this.
pues sería
So I
imposible
thank my family a
realizar
lot and
esta
dedicate my
disciplina.
win to them too.
The fact that you are sending that appreciation to your family that I know was not able to go with you on this trip, because these trips become very expensive, especially going to Hawaii and traveling that far around the world. Like Jen, who had to get some sponsorship to make it to Hawaii, I know you have some sponsors as well. Perhaps you'd like to give them a shout out.
Quiero seguir compitiendo a este nivel, aunque aquí en España es muy difícil por la poca ayuda
Yes,
económica que
I want to
tiene
carry
esta
on
modalidad o
competing
esta
at this level,
disciplina.
although here
Nos
in
cuesta mucho
Spain it's
conseguir
very
financiación
difficult due to the
y en estos
little
momentos
economic
pues
help
nos
that this
encontramos
discipline
buscando
receives.
alguna
It's
empresa que
very
se
hard
dedique
to
a
obtain
representar a
sponsorship. At the
atletas
moment, we are looking for
y
some
ayudarnos a
company
seguir
to
buscando
represent
sponsors,
us and to help
ya
us
que
find
nuestra intención
sponsors,
es
since our
seguir
intention is to
estando
remain
en la
being
élite
at
del
an elite
Ultraman.
level.
Yes. Well, I will make sure to connect your website and your athlete Facebook profile to the show notes for this podcast. And if people want to reach out to you, they can probably reach out to you through those means.
Al podcast le va a añadir tu página web, tus contactos para que si alguien
Thank
lo
you.
escuche.
Chamba, I would like to thank you for taking the time to come on to the podcast and arranging for Rosa to join us and make this happen. Thank you both very much, and congratulations and good luck in defending your title next year.
Muchas gracias por organizar esto, por estar aquí y mucha suerte para defender tu título el año que viene.
Muchas gracias y nos veremos muy pronto, Larry.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon, Larry.
All right, thank you. Hello, listener. I love getting your feedback and suggestions for the podcast. Keep them coming at 515ultraman@gmail.com. For those that want to help me promote the show, I suggest that you tell a friend to listen too. Word of mouth is a great way for podcasts to get new listeners. And if you don't mind publishing your feelings, a free way to support the show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app. It's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Finally, if you're so inclined, you can show your appreciation for my work by clicking the support link at the bottom of the show notes to go to my Buy Me a Coffee page. Thanks for all of your feedback and support. Now back to the show. My next guest made history at the 2024 Ultraman World Championships by becoming the first woman to win the overall title while setting a new female course record of 23 hours, 4 minutes, and 56 seconds. This came on the heels of her 5:15 distance world record for females, set in Penticton earlier this year in a time of 21 hours, 39 minutes, and 32 seconds, where she also won that event outright. Welcome back to the podcast, Jen Annett.
Thank you. This has been great.
So it's been a few weeks now since you were able to get back to Penticton from the island. I'm wondering, has it set in for you yet that you're not only the world record holder, but now you're also a world champion?
I have my moments, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I think I had more emotional moments the couple days after the race, just kind of being like, wow, that actually just happened. Yeah, so many emotions. And I think most of it settled in, but I've had, like, Penticton's small, right? So I have a lot of people come into work that are just like, congratulations. And then it's just like, kind of like hits you again. And I don't know, I'm fairly modest. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and I know this past weekend that you also had a little bit of a celebration so that the people in the Okanagan could come out and celebrate with you. How did that go?
It was good. Like Peter Beauchamp, who owns a barbershop down in OK Falls, has been a supporter of mine for a number of years and has helped me financially through some of his own fundraisers to help get me to Kona for the Ultraman World Championships. So financially, he's probably been one of my biggest sponsors. And he just wanted to throw a celebration. He was already planning it kind of as soon as I'd finished.
You had no choice.
Yeah, no. It's all good. I mean, celebrations are always welcome after something like this. And it was really good. And I'm very thankful that he went out of his way to do that for me.
Yeah. Now, in this race, you were pushed pretty hard in Hawaii by fellow professional triathlete Michelle Vesterby, who was also on the show previously. She's from Denmark, and she was coming off her own outright win in Arizona. So I would like to talk about some of those crazy times the two of you were putting out there on the first couple of days. If you're okay, I'll read out a couple for the listener, and then we'll get some comments.
Yeah, for sure.
Your swim was 3:16:49, which brought you out of the water in fourth place. And your bike on day one was 5:08:53, which was just 6 seconds different to Michelle's bike time for day one. And that gave you, which is just insane that you can go over that same distance at the same time. And then that gave you a total of 8:25:42 for day one, which put you second overall behind Michelle at that point by about 17 and a half minutes. So just tell us a little bit about how day one unfolded for you. And did you have any idea that you and Michelle were riding the exact same bike ride?
I mean, historically, I think if you were to look at our years of racing together, the bike times were pretty much where I would have expected them to be. I knew that Michelle would be out of the water before me. I thought that our times would have been faster. The currents changed that morning, so they were not in our favor. So overall, I went into this race expecting about a 20-minute deficit out of the water, which is, I think I came in 17 minutes or something behind her, which is, like I said, right within that ballpark of what I expected. Yeah. And then I did expect us to ride close to each other. She is a very strong swimmer biker combo. So how day one unfolded, honestly, was pretty much how I would have expected it.
Yeah, you know each other from being on the circuit for a number of years together. How friendly are the two of you? Have you known each other for a while, or is it more in passing?
We've met at races lots over the years. We don't really speak outside of races. But yeah, I mean, Michelle was great. I really, really enjoyed her company. Her crew was awesome. They were hilarious. It was really, really cool to have a fun crew out there cheering everybody on, because we were really close to each other. Yeah. Our crews kind of shared that cheering of each other on. And I mean, the whole feel of Ultraman is inclusive, family. That's what it's a totally different feel. Right. Yes, it's hard to say that there wasn't a little bit of competitiveness going on in the back of our head, because that's just nature. You don't come off of being a professional athlete without any sort of competitiveness. Right. But it was definitely more fun than competitiveness. I really, really enjoyed sharing the course with her, and it was a really good time.
Yeah. So then going into day two, you're probably expecting, well, we ride similarly, so it's going to be similar again. And your day two ride was a 7:52:17, and hers was a 7:58:20. So again, very close together. But the more freakish thing about your time in Hawaii at 7:52 is that is the same time you biked in Canada, a 7:52 and 27 seconds. 10 seconds different on two completely different profiles. How are you that consistent?
I have no idea. I mean, I basically just took my plan that I had in Canada and I executed it the same as I did in Hawaii. What the weather wanted to bring us on those days is out of our control. So I just had the numbers that I wanted to ride is what I stuck to, and whatever the time ended up being is whatever it ended up being. The day one bike conditions were terrible. And not to mention that the day one course is pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
You ride 12 kilometers straight up out of the water, and then through a bunch of rolls back down to ocean level, and then you climb another 40K up to 4,000 feet where we end at Volcano. So there is a lot of climbing. And that day, Kona decided to present its wonderful winds through the middle section of the bike course. So it was like a lot of almost just riding sideways to try to keep myself up.
Wow.
So hence why the times on day one were significantly slower than the times that I had here in Canada. But the day two conditions were perfect. Like I couldn't have asked for any better conditions at all. So I wouldn't say that I really planned to have the same time. Like 8 hours was my ballpark, which is what my ballpark was here. That's kind of like what I thought was a realistic goal. And that's just how it worked out.
Yeah.
Follow the numbers, and that's really all you can do. The time is just whatever it ends up being on that day based on the conditions, right?
Yeah. And what were you trying to ride to for the race?
Day one, I kind of stuck in like the mid 190s. I ended up being like high 190s, but like still like in that ballpark of what I wanted it to be. In day two, I was sticking in like the 185 to 190 range. So just basically a 10-watt drop from day one, because that ride is also 125 kilometers longer.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I think that's the right math. But yeah, and then keeping in the back of my mind that I do need to ride or run a double marathon the next day. So
yeah, you do want to save something.
Oh yeah. I mean, cooking my legs on the bike is not going to benefit day three at all. So those are pretty much the exact same numbers that I rode in Canada, and it worked out well. So I'm like, you know what? Go for the same, right?
Yeah. Don't fix what isn't broken.
Oh yeah, that's my motto.
So of a 5:15 race, 421 kilometers is the biking portion. And over that 421 kilometers, the two of you ended up being 6 minutes apart over that. So I geeked out a little bit just to check out what that meant for average speed. And for you, your average speed was 32.34 kilometers an hour. And for Michelle, it was 32.08 kilometers an hour. So you couldn't be riding much closer together.
No, I'm not going to lie. I was hoping to make up a little more time on day two, just to make going into day three not quite as much pressure, I guess. But it is what it is, right? Like going outside of that comfort zone at this sort of distance could be entirely detrimental. And I wasn't willing to take that. Those are risks that you take in like a half iron. Right? But not a 3-day endurance race.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense to stay within your plan and let day three be the place where you can figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were still in second place at the end of day two, about 11 and a half minutes behind. So what was your plan going into day three?
No, there was a whole lot of stuff going on there. I mean, Steve King is a really good friend of ours, and at the finish line on day 2, he's kind of pulled me aside and he's like, okay, so you ran a 6:46 in Penticton. And I'm like, don't expect that here. It's totally different conditions. It's like running on the Queen K is like running on hell on earth. Like it's hot, it's windy, it's exposed. There's no shade. And I mean, I've raced Ironman enough times that I know how brutal it is out there. So I'm like, no way, like 7 would be great. 7:15 might be a little more realistic, but I'm like, 7's a goal. And all he says to me is like, 7 will do it. And I'm like, just stop there. I don't want to hear anything else. Like, just stop there. And it's like, you know, through my crew and my husband, they kept like starting to bring things up. And I'm like, zip it. Like, I don't want anything in the back of my mind. Like, this is a long way I got to run tomorrow. Like, the whole thought of like looking at the island of Hawaii where Hobby is and where Kona is, and looking at that and saying, oh my God, I have to run all the way from there to there. Like, it's insane. It's the whole backside of the Ironman bike course, right? Mm-hmm. So plan was, well, the first 30K is all downhill from Hobby, which is brutal. I don't know who decided to put 30 kilometers of downhill into the beginning of a double marathon after we've just ridden 420 kilometers. But the plan basically was just to take that first, basically all the way to Quai High, just take that first 25, 30K relatively easy, knowing that, yes, I am running downhill, so my pace is likely going to be elevated, but to still be extremely cautious. Because I'm like, you know, it's easy. Shouldn't say running downhill is that easy because it's really hard on the legs, but it's cool. We started in the dark. I'm like, this technically is the easiest part of the day, and it's just going to get worse from here on in. And cooking those first 30K when you still got another 54 to go is, I mean, I did not want to walk at all on the Queen K. I didn't want to spend any more time out there than I had to. So, the plan was just, I knew the pace that I could run, and I actually felt terrible for the first like 20K. Just could not get in a rhythm at all, was super tense, wasn't relaxed. I did not feel like I did in Canada. And I'm like, oh, this is not good at all. But try to not let that get in your head. My kid ran with me a couple of times.
Yeah, I saw pictures of you running with Nixon.
Yeah, which was awesome. That just kind of really helped, like, I don't know, just helped lighten the mood. Right. I saw some whales. I'd watch the whales while I was running. Just tried to like get back in the fun mindset, because I really had that in Canada, but then my competitive side was definitely coming out, knowing that I had this 11-minute deficit that I had to make up if I was going to do now what I wanted to do.
Right.
I know that there was almost an hour difference with our run times in both of our previous Ultramans, between Michelle's time in Arizona and my time in Penticton, but anything could happen, really.
Yeah. Any given day.
She won multiple races. She's a phenomenal athlete. So I'm like, I can't assume anything at all. And anything could happen to me at that point too, right? Like, I could have something go totally sideways. So yeah, I just basically just executed the race and the way that I wanted to. I kind of got out in front, but only by about like 45, 50 seconds, and kept glancing back, and I'm like, oh my God, she's still there. Like, she's still there. And I'm like starting to get really nervous at like 35K. I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is going to be really interesting. I'm like, how are you going to manage this? Like, you have 11 minutes that you got to make up, and you really haven't put anything into her at all at this point. All I can do is do what I know I'm capable of, right? And just hope for the best. And I actually had my pacer's wife start giving me splits, and it was like, okay, 6 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm starting to feel better. And the next one was 9. I'm like, okay, we're moving in the right direction. And I think the next one was like 13. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay, I've done it. Like, I've done it. I just need to keep on doing what I'm doing right now. Like, do not change anything. Don't screw this up. Like, you're good. So it's kind of like a little bit of a load lifted there. But also on the flip side, we all know with racing, like, something could have happened there.
Yeah.
And she could pull that back, right? So, yeah, that's kind of just how the race unfolded.
Yeah. And I was watching from afar here with your team was doing updates kind of regularly. And it was great to be able to catch that and see as I think it was Shelley was doing most of the updates and making sure that people knew, the gap is growing a little bit. And so we were all kind of up to date on that stuff. But again, the amazing numbers that you pulled out is on your run, you did a 6:46.57 by the end of it, which in Canada, you did a 6:46 and 1 second. So you were within a minute again of your run time. It's like your coach must be so happy with the way you execute.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting to run the same as I ran in Canada just because the conditions are so much harsher. And while they would say the Canada course is harder, I wouldn't necessarily say so. The dynamics are so different that you can't really compare it. Like, the first 30K of Hawaii is all downhill, but the last essential 30K of Canada is all downhill. So you can choose your battles. Do you want to do the first part downhill or do you want to do the last part downhill? Neither of them are great.
Yeah. I know that downhill in Canada has wrecked a lot of people at the end of the run.
Oh, yeah. I was not saying very nice things, I'm going to say. I don't think I was at the end of this race either because I kept hitting red lights. So I'm like, here I am out on the Queen K running circles around the light post just because I'm like, if I stop, I'm not going to start running again. And people are just like, what is this girl doing? I'm like, I don't care how stupid I look.
Well, speaking of those two races, people that tune into the podcast, they're always looking for tips on how to run the different races or run a 5:15 in general. So is there anything that you did differently for Hawaii versus Penticton? It doesn't sound like you did a lot different. Or maybe is there anything that you would do differently if you were to go back and do Hawaii again after what you learned this time? Something that you can give to the listener then, if not different, but what was a good, successful piece of your race?
I mean, I didn't really change anything between Canada and Hawaii other than I would have taken in a little more fluid on the run, and I used ice a lot. We bagged bags and bags and bags, like little Ziploc baggies of ice, which was key for I grabbed 2 of those every couple of minutes and put one down the back of my neck, one down my sports bra. Keeping cool in hot conditions is super key. If you let that body temperature get up too high, it's not a good situation. Been there, done that. Usually results in a lot of stomach contents being left on the ground. And then, of course, just staying on top of your nutrition. My plan was to really make sure I utilized that downhill and the cooler weather to make sure that I had not a good stockpile in me. I didn't overdo it, but to really make sure that I focused on getting enough in so that I was going into the hotter part of the race, not depleted.
Right. And what about your overnight nutrition? What were you doing for this race for that? Was it the
Didn't change
same
anything.
as Canada? Yeah.
Yep. Lots of chicken and rice,
rice,
fields, baked potato chips. I did a typical McDonald's run after day 2. Nice. Which was awesome. Can't beat a cheeseburger and salty fries.
No. Yeah. So in that previous conversation that we had before you went to the race, part of what we talked about, you were saying that you've lost a little bit of the passion for triathlon and at least for pro racing, and you're trying to figure out where you are and what's going to be ahead for you in life. I'm wondering if, having done these 2 races, if that's changed anything for you. I know you've received a lot of press with these races. Maybe there's some new sponsors knocking on your door or something to keep you in the pros. And I heard that Cheryl offered you a free entry to next year for setting the record. So what's ahead for Jen Annett in the triathlon world and maybe just the ultra triathlon world?
I like, answer's still kind of the same. I really don't know. Like, I'm very, very happy with how this year went. It was a really non-pressure year, checked off things on my bucket list, did things that I never thought that I would ever be able to do. Lots and lots and lots of positives. Yes, there's been quite a bit of press involved with this. Unfortunately, no sponsors knocking on the door. That's just the world we live in now. So in terms of racing professionally, I'm really not quite sure what that's going to look like next year. Right now, it's just kind of about taking a bit of a break. I mean, I pretty much came back and dove right back into the Christmas chaos, both with work and home. So I can't say that I've really been breaking per se once I got home. But just taking time off and getting sleep and not having my entire life revolve around training. The last month leading up to the race in Hawaii was really, really hard mentally. I knew it was going to be just with that time of the year, and it's cold and dark in Canada in November. It's not pleasant. And doing 6-hour rides inside is, I don't know. I mean, you got to have a totally different mentality. And I give total kudos to people that can do that. But that is not me, not when I live in a beautiful place where we have amazing riding the majority of the year. And then to be stuck inside for 6 hours, just mentally, oh my God, I just want this to be done. That part was tough. I definitely am not missing that part at all right now. But yeah, I still really don't know where next year is going to go. So I really, really do believe there's a lot of truth in kind of stepping back and taking a break and just letting things settle and seeing where, if I get that itch back, or, you know what I mean? My head is going to tell me kind of where I'm going to go with this. So I really don't know. I'm not committing to anything at all. I'm not committing, and I'm not committing.
That's a reasonable answer, especially so short after the race.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, I want to thank you for coming back on the podcast and giving us your race update and telling us about this historic win that you got. And, all the best to you and your family for the holiday season.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been really, really good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview, and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.